November 24th, 1971. It was the day before Thanksgiving in Portland, Oregon. The air was thick with a cold, persistent drizzle, the kind of weather that defines the Pacific Northwest. In 1971, airports were different places. There were no metal detectors, no ID checks, and certainly no high-tech surveillance. It was the golden age of air travel, but it was also a time of political unrest and the looming shadow of the Vietnam War. Into this world walked a man who would become a shadow himself. He approached the Northwest Orient Airlines counter with a calm, businesslike gait. He was mid-40s, perhaps 6 feet tall, with a rugged but clean-cut appearance that some later described as Dan Draper-esque. He wore a dark suit, a crisp white shirt, and a black clip-on tie. He carried a single black attaché case. He didn't look like a revolutionary or a madman. He looked like a man who spent his days in an office and his weekends at a golf course. He asked for a one-way ticket to Seattle. The price was $20. He paid in cash, signing the ticket with the name Dan Cooper. He didn't know it yet, but that name would soon be etched into the archives of the FBI as the subject of the most extensive manhunt in history. He boarded Flight 305, a Boeing 727, and took his seat, 18C, in the very last row of the smoking section. The flight was only 1/3 full. Cooper sat alone, staring out the window at the rain-slicked runway. Shortly after takeoff at 2:50 p.m., he ordered a bourbon and soda. He lit a cigarette, his movements slow and deliberate. To the other 36 passengers, he was invisible. But to the flight crew, he was about to become their entire world. Florence Schaffner, a 23-year-old flight attendant, was working the back of the cabin. As she passed seat 18C, Cooper handed her a folded slip of paper. Florence was used to getting phone numbers from lonely businessmen, so she tucked the note into her pocket without looking. But Cooper leaned in. His eyes, hidden behind dark sunglasses, didn't blink. "Miss," he said softly, "you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Florence pulled the note out. It was written in neat, all-capital letters with a felt-tip pen. It read, "I have a bomb in my briefcase. I will use it if necessary. I want you to sit next to me. You are being hijacked." Florence sat. Cooper opened his briefcase just a crack. Inside, she saw 8 red cylinders, dynamite, wrapped in copper wire and connected to a large silver battery. He closed the case and whispered his demands. He didn't want political prisoners released. He didn't want a flight to Cuba. He wanted $200,000 in negotiable American currency, $20 bills only, and 4 parachutes, 2 primary and 2 reserve. And he wanted a fuel truck waiting in Seattle. For the next 2 hours, Flight 305 circled Seattle. The captain, William Scott, told the passengers there was a minor mechanical issue. In reality, the FBI was frantically scrambling. $200,000 in 1971 was a fortune, worth over $1.3 million today. They had to find the money, record the serial numbers of 10,000 $20 bills, and locate 4 high-quality parachutes from a local skydiving school. Up in the air, Cooper was remarkably composed. He wasn't the jittery, nervous hijacker the FBI was used to. He was polite. He ordered a second drink and insisted on paying for it. He chatted with the crew about the terrain below, correctly identifying McCord Air Force Base by its lights. He seemed to have an intimate, almost professional knowledge of the Boeing 727. He knew it was one of the few planes that could fly at low speeds without stalling, and crucially, it was the only one with an aft staircase, a door at the very tail of the plane that could be opened in flight. At 5:39 p.m., the plane landed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. Cooper ordered the pilot to taxi to a remote, brightly lit runway. He demanded that all cabin lights be turned off to deny snipers a clear shot. The money was delivered in a heavy canvas bag, and the parachutes were brought on board. True to his word, Cooper allowed all 36 passengers and Florence Schaffner to leave. Now, only the flight crew and Cooper remained on the aircraft. Refueled and ready, the plane took off again at 7:40 p.m. Cooper gave the pilots a very specific flight path toward Mexico City. He demanded they fly at the lowest possible altitude, 10,000 feet, and at the slowest possible speed. He insisted the landing gear remain down and the wing flaps be set at 15 degrees. The weather had turned from a drizzle into a violent storm. Visibility was near zero. 2 F-106 fighter jets followed the plane, but they had to fly in a S pattern just to keep from overtaking the slow-moving Boeing. They couldn't see a thing in the clouds. Cooper told the remaining flight attendant, Tina Mucklow, to go to the cockpit and stay there. He was now alone in the cabin. At 8 p.m., a warning light flashed in the cockpit. The aft stairs had been deployed. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Do you need any help?" "No," Cooper replied. It was the last word anyone would ever hear from him. At 8:13 p.m., the tail of the aircraft suddenly lurched upward. The pilots felt a massive change in air pressure. Dan Cooper had stepped off the stairs and into the freezing 90-mile-per-hour wind. He was jumping into a wilderness of Douglas firs and jagged rocks, wearing nothing but a suit and a raincoat, carrying 21 pounds of cash strapped to his body. He vanished into the dark heart of Washington State. When the plane landed in Reno, Nevada, the FBI stormed the cabin. They expected to find a body or a trapped man. Instead, they found an empty plane. Cooper was gone. The only evidence left behind was 66 unidentified fingerprints, his black clip-on tie, and a mother-of-pearl tie clip. The FBI launched NORJAK, Northwest Hijacking. It was a search of unprecedented scale. Thousands of soldiers, FBI agents, and local volunteers combed the suspected jump zone near Lake Merwin and the town of Ariel. They used helicopters, heat-seeking sensors, and even a submarine to search the depths of nearby lakes. They found nothing. No body, no parachute, no briefcase. A local reporter misheard the name Dan Cooper from a police source and reported it as D.B. Cooper. The mistake stuck, and a legend was born. The FBI checked every person named Dan Cooper in Oregon and Washington. They investigated over 800 suspects in the first few years, but the man in the dark suit had simply evaporated. For 9 years, the case was a dead end. Not a single one of the recorded $20 bills appeared in a bank or a store. The money had disappeared just as effectively as the man. Then, in February 1980, the mystery took a shocking turn. A 9-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was on vacation with his family on the banks of the Columbia River at a spot called Tina Bar. While digging a hole for a campfire in the sand, he hit something solid. He pulled out 3 bundles of waterlogged, rotting cash. It was nearly $6,000. The FBI confirmed it immediately. These were Cooper's $20 bills. The discovery raised more questions than it answered. Tina Bar was miles away from the suspected jump zone. How did the money get there? Geologists analyzed the layers of sand and sediment. They concluded the money had been buried there years after the hijacking. But the rubber bands holding the bundles together were still intact. Rubber bands that should have snapped after a few months in the water. Was the money lost in the river and washed ashore? Or did Cooper or someone else bury it there as a decoy? Over the decades, several men emerged as the perfect DB, Cooper. First, there was Richard McCoy. Just 5 months after Cooper's jump, McCoy hijacked a United Airlines flight using the exact same method and jumped over Utah with $500,000. He was a veteran pilot and an expert skydiver. He looked like the sketch. But the FBI eventually ruled him out, claiming he didn't match the physical descriptions provided by the flight attendants on the night of Flight 305. Then there was Robert Rackstraw, a former Army helicopter pilot with a history of fraud and a James Bond personality. He had the skills, the look, and the motive. When asked if he was Cooper, he would often give a cryptic smile and say, "I told you I was," but the FBI could never find the definitive link. Perhaps the most haunting suspect was Dwayne Weber. On his deathbed in 1995, he looked at his wife and whispered, "I am Dan Cooper." His wife later found old documents and a library book on DB, Cooper with Dwayne's handwriting in the margins. And then there was Sheridan Peterson, a professional smoke jumper who worked for Boeing. He was a man who lived for danger. When the FBI showed his photo to the flight attendants years later, they remarked on the striking resemblance. But Peterson, like the others, took his secrets to the grave. In 2011, the FBI allowed a group of citizen sleuths to analyze Cooper's tie using modern electron microscopes. What they found changed the narrative. They discovered microscopic particles of pure titanium and rare earth elements like bismuth and cerium. In 1971, these materials were extremely rare. They weren't found in typical machine shops. They were used in high-level aerospace engineering, specifically in the development of the Supersonic Transport, or SST project at Boeing. This led many to believe that Cooper wasn't a career criminal at all. He was an engineer, a brilliant man who may have lost his job during the aerospace recession of the early 70s and decided to use his technical knowledge to get even. In July 2016, after 45 years, the FBI officially suspended the investigation. They stated that their resources were needed for more pressing matters. The file on D.B. Cooper was moved to the archives, but the world refused to let go. Did Dan Cooper survive? Most professional skydivers say no. Jumping into a freezing storm at night over a forest with no goggles and an unsteerable parachute was a suicide mission. They believe he likely died on impact or succumbed to hypothermia within hours. But if he died, where is he? The forest is a hungry place, but it doesn't swallow a parachute and a briefcase without a trace. There are no bones, no scraps of fabric, no metal from the briefcase. D.B. Cooper has become more than a man. He is a folk hero. He represents the ultimate escape. In an age of total surveillance and digital footprints, the idea that a man could simply jump into the clouds and disappear forever is intoxicating. He outsmarted the FBI, the Air Force, and the laws of physics. Every year on the anniversary of the jump, fans gather in the small town of Ariel, Washington, to toast to the man in seat 18C. They look up at the rainy sky, wondering if he's still out there, or if he's just a ghost haunting the Douglas firs. The sky has kept its secret for over 50 years, and perhaps it's better that way. Because as long as we don't have an answer, the legend of D.B. Cooper will never truly die.